Welcome to the class, and I hope that we are connected. I hope everything is good. I hope that you had a good weekend. And today is Monday, it's the start of another week. So, hopefully, we can continue with a lot of classes this week, and hopefully, you can enjoy the classes. So, if you do not understand me, maybe you can use the subtitles on Facebook Live, and the majority of the subtitles are correct, but probably it's a good way to follow the class. You can select the subtitles and you can try to follow me. The idea is to have free classes in the morning at this time every morning. Because of the pandemic, a lot of people have been working from home, and it's a good opportunity to teach for free. And it's a good opportunity for me to grow online because my work changed a lot because of the pandemic. So, this is the plan, and hopefully we have no problem with the connection because last week the connection was very bad, and I think we have solved the problem with the connection. So hopefully that the connection will be fine and there's no big disruption with family working from home, and I think you probably have people working from home as well. So I hope that you had a good weekend. On the left you can see the schedule for this week. So every morning at 9 o'clock we have a speaking class, and it's on Zoom. It's open for everybody. And if you want to participate, you can message me and you can join the meeting class in the morning at 9 o'clock. There's a small fee, but in general, it's very good for practicing conversation, to meet new people and to see some new vocabulary. That's the idea. Every morning at 9 o'clock, some speaking classes. Now at 11:15, we have the free class. So I will continue to give you my advice, to give you my tips, and to help you with some grammar, some vocabulary, and some expressions. And hopefully, you can benefit from the free class. Also, today at 4 o'clock, we have another class dedicated to grammar. So, if you're interested in focusing particularly on different grammar topics, you are welcome to attend today's class at 4 p.m. It's a webinar, so it's practically the same as a class, but lots of people are welcome to attend, and we will focus on exercises in relation to grammar and explanations of grammar topics in particular. Okay, so again, if you want to book, just message me and I can reserve and confirm your place for today at 4 o'clock. And there's just a small fee of €2.90, so it's very, very cheap, very good price, and everything is very, very cheap compared to before, and hopefully it's good value, more importantly. Okay, so I hope we are connected. Just to double check that the internet is working and we are live, so that looks good. And really, I hope there's no delay with the connection, because last week again we had a lot of delays. So hopefully there's no problem. Social media, if you want to connect on social media, I have Instagram, I have Twitter, and the YouTube channel. Some people prefer YouTube, and there are all the details here if you want to connect on social media. And you are very welcome to connect. And every day I post some material on Instagram, on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. Okay, so maybe it's interesting, maybe it's boring, but that's the information if you want to join. Remember, everything is free, as I said, but at the end of the class, if you want to make a small donation to me, to support me, to help me with the classes, it would be very, very good for me. There are 2 or 3 possibilities if you want to make a small donation at the end. The first possibility that is best is probably the bank transfer. The direct details are here, the IBAN and the information for a direct transfer by bank is probably best for me. Maybe €1 or £1, just a small token or a small gesture is very good. The second possibility is the application Revolut with a telephone number, and the third possibility is the application Bizum, which is more popular in Spain. And again, the telephone number here if you want to make a small donation to support me and to say thank you. Okay, so that's possible at the end. Um, of course, I understand people have different situations, but it would definitely help me if you can support me. Okay, so today the plan, you can see here the agenda. So we will begin with an introduction of the grammar, very short introduction just to explain the terms and the technical vocabulary when you learn English. That's the first plan. I will show you the technical vocabulary when you learn grammar, number one. After the introduction, we will probably begin with an article from the BBC or not from the BBC, from Reuters. So this is the article for today, and the topic is in relation to the lockdown. So in England in particular, today is a big day because the restrictions are removed for a lot of the social restrictions in England. Today in Ireland, the similar situation, we are we are opening the restrictions, removing the restrictions a lot today. So this is good news. And the vocabulary here is related to this situation. So it's a very interesting article, and it explains the situation in England in particular for the pandemic, because today they are more advanced with the economy and they will open their economy quicker than other places. So it's just interesting for vocabulary and expression. So that's the plan for today. And that's it. Of course, we have a list of phrasal verbs and we have a list of idioms that you are probably familiar with if you have attended this class before. But if you are new today, thank you so much for attending, and hopefully you will enjoy the class, and let's continue, and hopefully you will benefit a little from the class. Okay, so here I will remove this, and now I will share the screen a little because I want to show you the most important document for me. This is the introduction document here, and you can see there are 3 sections. The first section is use of English, the second section is tenses, and the third section is related to other grammar topics. So for me, there are 3 sections when you learn English, and this document just explains the important introduction, the important concepts, the important terms when we learn English. So today I will just introduce and explain the key areas. So for example, use of English for me is probably the most important area when you learn English, because there are different accents and different dialects. So when people travel the world, when you meet people from different places, people speak very different English, different accents, different dialects, and this is very, very difficult for you to understand when people speak quickly. So for me, that's a big area. Listening practice is very important. You need to listen to radio, listen to the television. Also, you need to interact with lots of different people. That's the secret to really improve your listening skills for different accents and different dialects. We have particular accents in Ireland. I will explain during the class. The next 2 areas are really, really massive in relation to understanding English. The first area is phrasal verbs. So we have a particular area in English called phrasal verbs. We use them all the time. We have thousands and thousands of phrasal verbs. Basically, to explain, a phrasal verb is the verb plus a preposition, and it's possible the significance is literal, but it's also possible the significance is completely different. And this is very important to understand the sentence, because the significance can change completely in relation to a phrasal verb. They're very particular to English. They are a big, big area, and probably the most important area for sure, I think, when you learn English are phrasal verbs. Similarly, idioms or expressions are so frequent in conversation, so frequent in English, that they are very, very important to learn every part of idioms and phrasal verbs. For me, they are the 2 key areas in the use of English. Okay, conversation, of course, is important. You should try to practice conversation. Hopefully, somebody can correct you with conversation and encourage you. And practice speaking is key. And as I said, every morning we have a specific class at 9 o'clock for a speaking class, and you are welcome to attend just to practice a little if you want. Okay, pronunciation. So English has some special aspects in relation to pronunciation. There are some words that are not exactly phonetic, and some words are irregular for pronunciation, and during the class I try to identify and try to help in relation to this topic. Okay, the second area are tenses. So the technical vocabulary in relation to tenses is the perfect, the simple, continuous, infinitive, conditional, active, and passive. So you need to be very clear with the concepts of the time. When we speak in English, we speak in the present simple, past simple, future simple. The past simple is difficult because we have a lot of irregular verbs. The next concept is the continuous, the present continuous, the past continuous, the future continuous. I am speaking, I was speaking, I will be speaking. That's the simple and the continuous. The third area is the perfect. So we have the present perfect and the past perfect are very common. So the present perfect is one action that's completed, it's finished in the past, but the consequences are relevant and related to the present. And the structure is I have eaten, you have eaten. It's the subject, the extra auxiliary verb to have, and the participle. So I have eaten my breakfast this morning. It's finished, it's completed, but the consequences are related to now because at the moment I am not hungry. So that's a good example of the present perfect. The past perfect is similar, except the past perfect is a period in time in the past before another action in the past simple. So I had eaten my breakfast before my friend contacted me. There are more advanced structures of the perfect. We have the present perfect continuous, we have the past perfect continuous, and we have the future perfect. So the perfect is a very, very common and a big part of English. And finally, we have the infinitive, which the infinitive is the base and the foundation of the verb. And basically, the infinitive is usually to eat, to go, to drink, to have, to talk, to walk. So that's the infinitive, to plus the verb. Okay. And conditionals in the book, the theory for conditionals is a little bit heavy. It's very, very difficult to understand perfectly and really well the different possibilities for the conditional, the zero conditional, first, second, third, mixed conditionals. We have a lot of rules in relation to the conditional. The book is a bit difficult. The theory is very, very heavy, but in reality, it's a little more flexible and it's a little less strict, in my opinion, in conversation. Basically, it depends on if. If it rains today, I will not go to the city centre. If I spoke with my friend yesterday, I would have asked about the football. So that's just a conditional and it's a bit heavy in the theory, but in reality, it's very, very important. Okay, so the active and the passive, the typical structure in English is the subject, the verb, and the object, and this is called the active. And a more advanced structure is when we change the position, we substitute the subject with the object, we change position, and we also introduce an extra verb to be and the participle of the verb. One example, the man kicked the ball is the active. That's the typical structure. The man kicked the ball. And then to create the passive, we change the position. The ball, extra verb to be in the past because the original sentence is in the past. So the ball was participle of the original verb kicked by the man. So that's a difficult structure, but it is very, very important because we use the active and the passive a lot. Okay, so there you can see the active and the passive. So they're the most important concepts in relation to grammar, in relation to the tenses and the times that we speak. And finally, we have a few more concepts in relation to grammar that are very important during the class. I mention frequently a lot of these concepts, so it's necessary that you are clear with the idea and with the vocabulary. So first, we have a noun. So we have a noun is a person, a place, or a thing. So many things are nouns: hand, head, jacket, screen, bottle. We have so many nouns, and every noun you need an article. We have two possibilities for the article. We have a bottle or the bottle, indefinite or definite article. Very technical, but that's the possibility. We have a bottle or the bottle. The is specific and a is general. Okay, so we have an article, we have a noun, we also have the adjective. So the function of the adjective is to describe the noun. So bottle, big bottle. An article, the big bottle. That's the typical structure in English. In Spanish, in Portuguese, the adjective is after the noun. So it's very different in English that the adjective generally is before the noun. The next idea is the adverb, okay? And the function of the adverb is to describe the verb. The adverb typically ends in ly, quickly, happily, slowly. That's typically an adverb, and the function is to describe a verb. The position of the adverb is typically after the verb: to drink quickly, to talk slowly. That's the idea and the concept of the adverb. Okay, so there's very important terms here that we need to be very familiar with the terms, especially during the classes. But every school, every teacher is practically the same in relation to the importance of these vocabulary, these terms. Okay. Modal verbs. So modal verbs are very unique and very important to English. They are a group of verbs we use in particular situations. For example, for ability, we say can. I can swim 10 miles. I can run a marathon. It's my ability. Also permission. I can enter the room. I can go to the airport. It's permission and ability. Typically we use the modal verb can. The next three, could, may and might, are typical for possibilities, situations of possibilities and situations of options. I could go to the cinema. I might go to the cinema. I may go to the cinema. All very, very similar in the situation for my option, but may and might are probably a little more formal and a little more polite. Okay, very important. Also, shall is similar to will, and it's in the question. Shall we watch the football? Shall we eat the food? It's a question, it's more formal, and it is frequent, the verb shall. Okay, should is for advice and recommendation. So, for typical situations when you recommend something to a friend, you should visit the cinema. You should contact your friend. It's my advice and my recommendation. The second verb has the same significance. The pronunciation is a little difficult because the G is silent. You ought to visit your friend. You ought to contact your cousin. So, vocabulary that we use, verbs we use in particular situations for recommendation and advice. Must is obligation. So, you have no choice. It's a necessity. You must collect the children. You must watch the football. So, modal verbs are a big, big part of English. And the big rule in relation to a modal verb, normally the modal verb is before another verb, and typically another verb is the infinitive, to go, to eat, to drink. But the rule, after the modal verb, we eliminate to. Okay, so can, go, might, have, should, eat is correct. The error, the incorrect is should, to go, might, to have. Just a little detail, but I'll explain more during the class. Prepositions, we have maybe 150 prepositions. They are small words that we use so frequently, and we use them so much in relation to direction, in relation to movement, and in relation to position. That's the key. They are the key uses of the prepositions. So for direction, I talk in general, but I talk to you. So it's direction. I look in general, but I look at the book. So for specific direction. Movement, I run across the road. I go in the building. So for direction, for movement and position. The bottle is on the table. The bottle is over the table, under, beside, next to, in front of, below. So prepositions are very important. Also, in relation to phrasal verbs, prepositions are key and they are so important. There's a big association with emotion in relation to the prepositions. For example, up is positive, happy, creation, down is negative, destruction, and maybe a little sad. Okay, so prepositions are really key in the area of phrasal verbs also. And they are the most important topics for today. Just one or two more. The technical explanation of the possessive adjective, possessive pronoun, or the object pronoun. For example, my bottle, your bottle, his bottle, her bottle is the possessive adjective, but the bottle is mine, the bottle is yours, the bottle is his, masculine, the bottle is hers, feminine. This is the possessive pronoun. And then finally, give the bottle to me, give the bottle to you, give the bottle to him, masculine, give the bottle to her, feminine, is the object pronoun. So the technical name is possessive adjective, possessive pronoun, and object pronoun if you are studying these. But they're really, really key, and many people confuse the three areas. So you need to be very, very clear when you use them and how you use them. Okay, and that's it. So the difference between another, other, the other, and the others is important. During the class, I try to identify. Creation of the question is a big area. The area of suffixes and prefixes for me is a very important area. Most people don't pay attention to this area, but I really think it's a good area for you to study, to realize the form of the word. Is the word a verb? Is it an adjective? Is it a noun? The suffix is a big, big indicator of the form of the word. And for me, it's a very important area that people generally don't focus too much time on, but you should. Conjunctions are linkers. We have some basic linkers, but we have some more advanced and some more important linkers that are necessary. You use them appropriately. That's the key. And that's it. So If you want to improve your vocabulary, a lot of people want to improve vocabulary and want to use better vocabulary. The secret for this, in my opinion, is not very dramatic. You need to read. You need to read books. You need to read magazines, newspapers. Read, 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 read. This is definitely the best way to learn different vocabulary and to learn different grammar structures. Reading is really the key, and also writing is a second area. So reading is very important. Writing is really, really important that you practice. Some people have no habit, no routine to write, but you should, and you should begin to practice your writing. Listening is very important. Speaking is very important. And finally, grammar. To study from a grammar book is important. They're the 5 areas, and that's it. So exams, there are popular exams in English. You have the Cambridge exams, the first certificate, the advanced certificate, the proficiency certificate are very popular for Cambridge. The IELTS exams are also very, very popular. I have specific webinars, specific classes that I teach people specific exams. So for example, on Wednesday, we have an IELTS class and we have an IELTS group that is open for anybody to attend. And on Thursday, it's the advanced exam for English that we have a group for people preparing exams for the advanced exam on Thursdays. And on Saturday, we have people preparing for the B2, the first certificate. So these groups, these classes are available if you want to join. Okay, so that's the introduction. Now I will show you the article. And for me, this is just a general article from the newspaper. It does not matter where, you should read as much as possible. And this is really, really interesting. And just before we continue, I wanted to make sure we are still live. And I think we are still working. So that's good, good news. And again, hopefully there's no delay with the connection, that you understand perfect. So now I will show you the article on the left. And you can see here, it's a typical article from the newspaper. It's very, very important. It's very, very good quality English. And I want to help with the vocabulary and I want to help with the explanation and the pronunciation. Okay, so let me begin. First, I read in relation to vocabulary and in relation to pronunciation. That's my first objective, to practice pronunciation. After the pronunciation, I return to explain the key vocabulary and the key grammar concepts. That's the idea really of the class. That's the structure of the class. And here you can see the title is A Race for a Cure. So there is a verb to cure. And I think it's very similar in Spanish and Portuguese. When you are sick, you need a cure to feel better. So here it's a race. Like a lot of people are working hard to find the solution for the medicine. Okay, so I'm so excited. England reopens with pints pulled, shopping sprees, and haircuts. Okay, so really good vocabulary already. And I don't know if you can hear the birds. You can hear the birds and the nature beside me because I'm very close to the park. Okay, so here I'm going to continue reading. Birmingham in England, Reuters, people queued up outside retailers across England on Monday to release their pent-up shopping fever, and some grabbed a midnight pint or even an early haircut as England's shops, pubs, gyms and hairdressers reopened after 3 months of lockdown. Okay, so very, very interesting. First, the word so. We use so before an adjective to intensify. So you are happy, but you are so happy. So this intensifies the situation. And maybe if I think I will continue with this size because maybe it's a little bit better. And I'll just lower. Sorry for all the changes, but I think this is a little bit better for everybody to see. So exactly, we use so in relation to intensify. So if you intensify the adjective, we say so. You are tired, but you are so tired intensifies the situation. And this is exactly the same, okay? So that's the situation. I'm excited, but I'm so excited. Also, the difference between excited and exciting is very, very important. We have a lot of words: bored, boring, interested, interesting. So there is a big difference between the two, and let me explain basically, because for example, excited, the ed and ed is typically the sensation for the person. Okay, so for example, I am excited. It means I'm very animated, I'm very happy, I'm very excited. It's my personal sensation, it's my personal feeling. Similar with bored, I am bored, it's my personal feeling, it's my sensation. But the movie, because it's away, the movie is boring, the holiday was boring, the book was boring, the other person is boring, but your sensation is you or I am bored. Okay, exactly the same. Excited, I am excited, but the movie is exciting, the idea. So very, very important. The same with interested. I am interested, but the movie is interesting. So here, I am so excited is the description and the sensation of this person. England opens. So the verb is to open. I open, you open. But the third person, typically we have the S. I go, you go, he goes, she goes. So the third person in the present frequently has the extra S. And here it's the same because it's the present. But also the prefix re is to do again. So if you make but you remake, if you do, you redo, if you watch, you rewatch, replay. So re has a significance that you do the verb again. So it opens again, de nuevo in Espanol. With pints pulled, so it's the typical vocabulary. We say the verb to pull a pint. So you go to the bar, and it's very important, the vocabulary, that the barman or the barwoman pulls the pint. So the significance to make the pint or to pour. So there's two possible verbs, to pour a pint or to pull a pint. And in relation to pouring, we can say rain. It is pouring rain, and the significance is very, very heavy rain. But there is another word which is completely different. On your face, you have a lot of pores, which are like little holes on your face, very, very, very small. With the microscope, you can see they are the pores. But the pronunciation is practically the same, but the spelling is completely different. To pour a point, okay, or to pull a point, as this says here. And that's it as well. I think there is another phrase, a verb to pour over, which means to examine in detail. So if you pour over your document, or you pour over the news, or you pour over the paper, that's very advanced, and the significance is you examine. I think the spelling is this, but I could be wrong. But there is a significant phrase, a verb to pour over, and the significance is to examine in detail. Okay, so I'll just write that here. Examine in detail. And I think it's this one. I could be wrong, but that's just the instinct for the sound. Okay, the next one is very, very good. So a shopping spree is very, very famous, and this means, for example, on your birthday, when it's a special occasion, your birthday, Christmas, you go to the shop with the intention to buy. You buy a lot of things. This is a shopping spree. Okay, it's a very specific word that we use specifically in relation to shopping, and the significance is you go only with the intention to buy so many things. Okay, so to buy a lot of things is a shopping spree. Okay, a lot of things. And I think that's the only situation really we use a spree, but it's very specific in this situation, a shopping spree and haircuts. Okay, the verb to queue is very important, but we have two words in English. The verb is to queue, and also we have another word, which is a queue, is a substantivo or a line. Okay, and maybe you can say a file. No, not really, but we say single file. So to queue is the verb. You want to enter the shop, but it's necessary you queue outside, or you make a line, or you form a line. So typically in school they have a line, and typically in the shop you have a queue or a line. So it's flexible, no real difference. Probably queue is maybe more Germanic, perhaps, I don't know, but that's just the reason we have two different words, because English has an influence of lots of different origin languages, and this could be the reason and the explanation we have different words with the same significance. Okay, typical in school you say single file, which has the meaning that you have one person. So a verb is to queue up, which really means that you are waiting in line. There's no real difference to queue and to queue up, but it's a metaphor. We use this in other situations. For example, marriage. if the girl or the boy is very beautiful and very, say for example, the boy or the girl are very marry, people want to marry them. They're very they have good prospects, they have a good job, good family, good opportunities. So people are queuing up to marry this person, or people are queuing up to maybe speak with this person. So it is a metaphor that we use. It's a phrasal verb we use in other situations when people want a lot of things, or you can queue up to buy something. So it's a, as I said, it's a metaphor we use in lots of situations in English. So here it's literal. They're physically queuing up. And retailer. So we have a retailer, which is another word for a shop, and the opposite is a wholesaler. This is very, very interesting. So a retailer is maybe the small shop where people go to buy, the public can enter, but a wholesaler is typically the big factory, the big warehouse. Okay, specific vocabulary, the warehouse or the big factory. And this is the typical location where you have all a big quantity of the product in the warehouse, and the wholesaler typically buys a huge quantity, a big quantity of things. But the retailer, it's just maybe one quantity, two quantity. But the wholesaler has a big, big, big quantity that they buy. That's the big difference between a wholesaler and a retailer. Okay. The next expression is very, very interesting. The first typical expression is in relation to demand. Okay, so to release your demand or to release your attention. So here it's a very famous expression, to release pent up demand. For me, it's the most common, and this is like to liberate. So to release, this morning in the class, we spoke about the movie. You release a movie. So when you have finished making the movie, you have finished recording the movie, you release the movie. So you send the movie to the cinemas, you send the movie to the shops. That's to release at the beginning. Similar to estrenar, un poquito similar a estrenar. And we have another expression, to release. Demand is very, very significant because the verb to supply and demand is a very famous expression. So the verb to supply is with business and a company. So one company, for example, Apple, the factory in Apple, they supply the product to the shop. Okay, so Apple is the supplier, and a lot of people want the product. So the demand is very, very high. So supply and demand. It's a very economic situation. So here we have a lot of demand because people have stayed at home for a long time. People have a lot of money, maybe because they are at home and they have not spent money because of the pandemic. So now there's a big demand for the shops. And this is an expression, to release the demand is like to exploit, very similar to exploit the demand. But the word here, pent up, is very, very interesting adjective. And this means when you contain the demand, maybe pent up emotion is very typical as well. So, for example, emotions, and you keep the emotion to yourself. You do not communicate, you do not explain, you do not express your emotions. So, you have pent up emotion. So, the significance is it's very intense and it's at the limit. So, this is the same. Pent up demand has the significance of intensity. The demand is really, really, really high. Okay, so that's a very, very famous expression in English. You need to be aware of it. It's a little advanced. And here they exchange the word demand. So it's not demand, they say fever, but the significance is exactly the same. So if there's a lot of fever, it's a lot of energy, a lot of emotion. So it's just a flexible substitution for demand. Grab is very, very important. In Espanol, grabar is to record, but that's completely different in this situation. So in Espanol, grabar is to record a movie, record the television. But in English, the verb to grab maybe is connected, but physically the grab is this action. So if my friend grabs my arm, it's like this action, to grab. So grab is physical, like this, to grab. It's maybe aggressive and it's maybe negative, but we use this in other situations as a metaphor in relation to food. Grab a coffee, grab a sandwich. The significance is to buy or to take the coffee very, very quickly because you are working on the road and you need to grab a coffee. Okay, you need to buy very, very quickly. and that's extremely typical. And here the sentence is grabbed. A is the article, pint is the noun, and midnight is the adjective. So to grab a midnight pint is the significance to buy or to take a drink at midnight because the restrictions changed at this time. Even in Espanol is like incluso, it's emphasis. So everybody is going to the party, even John. Everybody's going to the party, even Sandra. So it's like emphasis to include extra emphasis that John is going because John normally does not go to the party, for example. An early haircut. So here we have the article, which is the same as a, but it's necessary an because the next word begins with a vowel, and the vowel is a, e, I, o, u. So for this reason, we say an and not a. Haircut, no problem. As has the significance mientras here. As is very, very flexible. As can mean like. As can mean because. As can mean while. And I'll show you here the possibilities. As can be like. So for example, you look the same as your brother. You look the same as your sister. And also it can be because. I go to the shop as I need some milk. I go to the shop because I need some milk. Number two. Number three, the significance is mientras, while in English. So I go to the shop while as you go to the cinema. So very, very flexible word. And here, I think it's mientras, while at the same time reopened after 3 months of lockdown. The second paragraph, we have some very, very interesting vocabulary, and I'm just going to share this again. Sorry for the change, but I'm going to give more space for my text here because I want to write a little bit more. So the next paragraph, we have some really, really interesting vocabulary. First rule, when we have this word after, normally the next word is the gerundio, the gerund in English. So normally ing is after the preposition. So for example, after speaking with my friend, after going to the cinema, after contacting. So normally we say after. You can also say before. You can also say since. And you can also say without. So these words, normally the next verb is the ing. So for example, without knowing, without speaking, since going, since eating. So that's the general list of words that are very, very important. We follow the next verb in the ing. Imposing is a very advanced word, and there is an expression to impose yourself. So maybe you start a new job and you want to give the best of yourself. You want to impact the new job. So you impose yourself. It could be negative, it could be positive, and the typical preposition is on. So a new person arrives to the group and this person imposes themselves on the other people. So it's really possible combination to impose yourself on with the preposition here. Onerous, restrictions. So, and this is the superlative and the adjective. So the adjective is onerous, very, very difficult vocabulary. And to show you, I'm going to show you here in the dictionary. If something is very, very onerous, it could be very, very difficult, very hard. I think that's the correct spelling. Onerous, yeah. So in Arabic, Bulgarian, Chinese, Croatian, Czech, Dutch, French, German, Hebrew, Hindi, Hungarian, Italian, obviously Japanese and Korean, there's a problem with the text. But Spanish, uno. No, I don't think so. I think it's different. So basically, onerous is very heavy. So if you have onerous restrictions, onerous responsibilities, it's very heavy, very, very heavy. And here it's the same. But this is an example of the comparative and the superlative. And the structure for the comparative and the superlative is typical with the adjective: happy, happier, happiest; tired, more tired, most tired; onerous, more onerous, the most onerous. So this is an example of the comparative and the superlative. Generally, if the adjective is more than one syllable, for example, happy, it's generally one; happier, it's irregular, but the general rule, when the syllable is more than one, we use more onerous or most onerous. Restrictions with the S is plural. Towards is a preposition, very important. I think in Espanol is hacia. So you travel towards the city. you travel towards, the direction is towards, the train is going towards Madrid, the train is going towards Cork. So hacia, I think in Espanol, is the preposition towards. Okay, really advanced, but very, very simple as well, but very good. Urge, for me, this is very important because in English we have an urge, which is the noun, and the adjective is urgent. Okay, so the telephone call is very urgent, adjective. The message, the information is very urgent, pronunciation, and the adjective. But the noun is an urge, and this is very typical in conversation. At the moment, it's 12 o'clock. You can see the time, and I have an urge for a coffee. I have an urge for some chocolate. Really, really good expression. And that means you have a desire, a really strong desire for chocolate, an urge for chocolate. And that's very, very famous. It's very typical, and it's related to the noun or the adjective urgent. Okay, also it's a verb to urge, and it's typical for another person. I urge you to change the channel. I urge you to apply for the job. I urge you to return to your city. So the significance is I strongly recommend. It's really, really intense, really strong. I strongly recommend you to take this action. Very good word, very good family, and very, very good quality English as well. Okay, so good uses, and you can see the examples there. And here, the Prime Minister, like well, I think in England they have the Prime Minister is the first person responsible for the government, and that's the subject. The verb is urge in the past, urged people. This is really important because it's one person, two people. One person, seven people. So generally plural, we say people. To behave is very important vocabulary as well. It's typical for children. You have to behave very well. Behavior is the noun, and a lot of adjectives we can say well behaved, badly behaved. So these are typical sentences, typical structures. No, there's a famous television program, Men Behaving Badly. It's like a series, but it's very famous. So the verb is to behave, and the noun is the behavior. Okay, so that's the verb, and as I said, the noun is the behavior. Also, in this context, you can say bold behavior. So bold is a very important word in English. It has a few possibilities. The first possibility is with the document. So here in my document, you can see the B. So the B represents bold, which means very, very strong. Okay, negrito in Espanol for the text. So really strong color. Okay, but it's a metaphor in other situations. Your action is very bold. Bold behavior, bold action. It can be negative, it can be positive. It's very typical with children. If the child is very bold, they do something bad. But it's very possible, like adventure. If you change your job, it's a very brave or valiant or very risky situation. So it's a bold decision. So it's a very, very flexible word. Still is simple, but it's very important. The verb is to be in the past. The subject is the coronavirus. The verb to be in the past, irregular. I am, I was. The virus is, the virus was. Still is todavía in Espanol. And the difference between still and yet is very important. I think in Espanol, todavía, aún. So it continues to be. Still has the significance, it continues to be. I had my breakfast this morning. So really good vocabulary, really advanced, really fluent. And here it continues to be a dangerous problem. The coronavirus is still a threat. We continue maybe the next paragraph. As, again, remember the significance. It could be like, while, because, and here I think it's mientras, while in English. Spanish, mientras. So it means at the same time. This is very, very important verb. Rose, okay? So the verb is to rise. And remember the difference between to rise and to raise. So typically the first verb is when the subject is maybe the price, the sun, the temperature. So the temperature rises, the sun rises at 6 o'clock and the price rises. Okay, so that's very, very important when the subject usually is temperature, price, and the other one was the sun. Okay, so it's temperature, price, and sun, but it's complicated because the past is rose. Okay, so it's irregular past, and that's the reason it's a complicated verb. So the price rises, the sun rises, but the past is irregular, so the sun rose, and as is at the same time, mientras. Okay, the next verb is similar, but it's different, and we say to raise, but it's typical the person doing the action. I raise my hand, I raise the bottle. It's like to lift, but the subject of the sentence, the person, typically does the action. Okay, so I raise a question, I raise an objection, I raise the bottle, I raise my hand, and that's the big, big difference. It is also possible to raise a child. If you raise the child, the significance is you educate, you help the child can grow because you raise the child. So really, really good vocabulary and a big difference between the verb to rise and to raise. Okay, and here it's the past. Dozens, good vocabulary, and the pronunciation is important. Very similar in Spanish. Docena. Queued up is exactly the same as we said. Up is no real difference, so people queued outside. No difference really. Here with up, you can include up or you don't have to include up. No problem, okay? Outside is the preposition. Inside is the opposite. Outside, no problem. In, we use for the city. And remember, one city is singular with the Y, and plural is cities. Okay, so very, very interesting. You can also say a fly como mosqueta, I think, something similar like this, and you have two flies. So normally the Y in the singular changes to the IES in the plural. That's a little rule, such as when we use examples. So when you give examples, you have three possibilities. You can say such as, you can say like, or you can say for instance. Okay, so you like Italian food, such as lasagna, spaghetti bolognese, pizza. When you give examples, it's possible to say such as, it's also possible to say like, or it's also possible to say for instance. And here it's an example. So for example, Birmingham and outside JD Sports on, we use for a street. So because we have a street and it's a surface, we typically have the preposition on. Okay, and that's very, very important. Oxford Street in London. This is very advanced vocabulary. The verb is to deter, and it may be similar in Latin to stop. Okay, so the price deters people from buying the cigarette, for example, because maybe the cigarettes are bad for your health. So the price deters, so the significance is stop. Okay, and here it's the negative. Undeterred is an adjective, so it means they were not stopped. The weather, it's very difficult, but very good sentence. So weather is the noun, cold is the adjective, and here we have the adverb. Remember, the function of the adverb is to describe the verb, but here it's maybe a mix between an adverb and an adjective. But basically, season is temporano, summer, winter, spring. So summer, winter, spring, and autumn. Okay, I almost forgot the seasons. And this is not typical. So because it's not typical, we use the negative. Unseasonably cold weather. Very, very good vocabulary, very advanced, very fluent, and maybe confusing for people learning English. And you might have a difficulty to understand, possibly. Okay. This word is very good and very typical. It's a synonym for people. So, for example, we say my folks, which is very typical, and that means my parents. So it's possible to say my folks are at home, my folks are on holiday, my folks are visiting me. So the significance is my parents are visiting me. You can also say folk music, and word people. Okay, and here some people lined up. So we have seen already queued up, and it has exactly the same significance. So this is just a synonym, and this is a tip. When you write in English, it's a good idea to use synonyms because it's more interesting, it's more enjoyable. Because if you use the same word again and again and again, maybe it's boring, maybe it's not interesting. So here we have a synonym: line up and queue up after midnight to raise a pint. So here's a brilliant example of the difference between to rise and to raise. You remember? So rise is typical, the price, the temperature, and the sun, but raise is typical, maybe people do the action. Typically, okay, not necessarily a rule, but typically. And here in this sentence, people, the assumption, we assume people are raising the pint, they are lifting the pint, and that's like to say cheers, like a salute. So to raise your pint, and at a wedding, we always say raise your glass in a salute, in respect. So after the speech, like the discurso, after the speech, we say raise your glass. So please raise your glass to say thank you, raise your glass in respect, in recognition. And here it's raise a pint. Fellow are like compañeros, my classmates. So people with the same level, people with the same ability. You can say a peer, and we also say peer pressure. So peer pressure is typically the pressure. The teenager feels a lot of pressure to do this activity. The teenager feels a lot of pressure to do this action because his friends are doing the same action. So that's peer pressure. And you could say fellow teenagers, fellow workers, fellow Irish people, fellow Americans. So it's the same level. So it's a really, really good. And here the verb is to revel, which is good. And the significance is maybe to party or to celebrate. Okay, so a reveler or a reveler would be maybe a person celebrating the party, the person having a very, very good time. And here, very advanced, very fluent, fellow revelers is a very creative, very advanced way to say other people having a party the same as you. It's a really good example. And then it's just a specific place. Website is very, very clear normally with the news and with the vocabulary. So definitely I would recommend these two websites for reading and to try to understand. And this is a similar example. You can see very, very good vocabulary, very interesting words, and very interesting grammar as well. So it's very, very nice. Now you have the opportunity, if you want to connect on Zoom. I know at the moment you're using Facebook Live, but if you have a question, you can connect on Zoom and participate, because at the moment I cannot see your comments on Facebook, but that's no problem. So you are welcome to participate on Zoom. This is the code and the ID if you have a question. And I think we can, so I can close this page. And that's a very good example of analysis. So this is my method. This is my technique normally in the class to show an article and to examine the article for vocabulary, for expressions, and connections with other vocabulary and connections with other expressions. Okay. Good. And I think that's probably sufficient for today, I guess. So I'll just have a little break. So remember, the social media is here if you want to connect on Instagram, if you want to connect on Twitter, and if you want to connect on YouTube. And also, if you want to make a small donation to support me, you are very welcome. And it would be a great help for me with a small donation. As I said, the bank transfer is probably the best here with the details. Maybe €1 would be amazing, would be fantastic. It's only optional. It's not a necessity, but it definitely would help me. And the other possibilities are Bizum or Revolut. PayPal is a possibility, but there's a little commission there as well. Okay, so as I said, if you want to speak, now could be a good time. If not, maybe I will continue with expressions, but maybe not. I think that's probably sufficient for today. And remember, today at 4 o'clock, we have another class today at 4 o'clock in relation to grammar. So here you can see there's a grammar webinar today at 4 o'clock Irish time, and the topic is grammar. And we will focus on another question, because every week, we focus on different parts of grammar, and the best website is maybe the British Council for Grammar, and the Cambridge website in relation to grammar is really, really good. And this is planned for today at 4 o'clock. We have a webinar dedicated to grammar, and it's open for everybody. I think we've 1 or 2 people confirmed already, and it's another good opportunity to practice English, and you are welcome to participate. You just have to message me to book your place. Okay, so very good. I'm very happy, and I think that's definitely sufficient for today. So I hope that you had a very good day. I hope that you had a good morning, and enjoy the rest of your afternoon, and hopefully I will see you today in the grammar class. So thank you again. Again, these are free classes, and it's a good opportunity to reach lots of people, and I hope that you are learning from the class, and I hope that you are benefiting from the class, and it's a good